Humans have been advancing our knowledge for as long as we have been on Earth. And the more we learn about the inner workings of our world, the more we learn that there's still much to discover. So today we'll be taking a look at these 3 recent discoveries. Graves of nearly 600 cats and dogs in ancient Egypt may be the world's oldest pet cemetery. Nearly 600 cats and dogs lie in a cemetery on the western coast of the Red Sea in Egypt. The tombs are over 2,000 years old and show that the animals were buried with their collars. Archaeologists have assumed that this place, discovered 10 years ago and which had not been studied in depth until now, is the oldest known pet necropolis, which pets were buried with them, saying that even then it seems animals were treated as a member of the family. The holy field appeared in dunes outside the city walls. Researchers from the Polish Academy of Sciences found it under a Roman garbage dump and believe the cemetery was used especially between the mid-1st to mid-2nd century AD, when the west coast of Berenice was a bustling center that traded ivory, fabrics, and other luxury goods from India, Arabia, and Europe. The team led by Marta Osipinska had already unearthed the remains of about 100 animals, most of which were cats. Despite evidence showing that they had been cared for as pets, some archaeologists raised the possibility that the bones had been discarded as garbage. Now 585 skeletons have been found, which have been analyzed in detail thanks to the help of a veterinarian, who determined the cause of death, diet, and even the health of the pets. The conclusion is that all these pets were carefully deposited in well-prepared pits, as explained in an article published in the journal World Archaeology. Many were also covered with textiles or ceramic pieces that formed a kind of sarcophagus. Cats, which accounted for 90% of the total remains, wore iron collars or other threaded glass and shells. But there were also dogs and 2 different species of macaque monkeys. Some of these animals came from outside the African continent. Among the pets buried at Berenice were many with injuries and illnesses that would have prevented their survival. The canines, which accounted for about 5% of the burials, tended to be older when they died. Many had lost almost all their teeth and suffered from joint degeneration. In the cemetery, however, not a single mummification was found, nor was there any trace of deliberate animal sacrifice or slaughter, something that was widespread in the Nile Valley. This space was a place with ambiguous cultural rules, say specialists. It was not very Egyptian despite its location, but not very Roman either, despite political domination and economic control, they conclude. Oldest ever piece of string was made by Neanderthals 50,000 years ago. A piece of string about 50,000 years old, the oldest discovered so far, has been found in a cave in France and once again has cast doubt on the idea that Neanderthals were cognitively inferior to modern humans. Researchers at Kenyon College, USA have found a 6.2 mm fiber fragment dating back some 41,000 to 52,000 years, making it older than the previous record-holding piece of string, a 19,000-year-old fragment found in Israel. Bruce Hardy and his fellow researchers, who reported the discovery in an article published in the scientific journal Scientific Reports, discovered this new piece of string attached to a Neanderthal tool. At first, it looked like a bundle, but a microscopic examination revealed that it was a bunch of intertwined fibers. According to the researchers, the finding of this ancient string reveals the possibility of other Neanderthal skills, such as the creation of bags, mats, nets, and cloth, suggesting that Neanderthals were more intelligent than is often assumed today, as it implies that Neanderthals understood concepts such as pairs, sets, and numbers. The study notes that the production of this rope demonstrates that Neanderthals had a detailed ecological understanding of trees and how to transform them into completely different functional substances. It also implies a cognitive understanding of arithmetic, which and context-sensitive working memory, according to the study. This is because it required keeping track of several sequential operations simultaneously. As Hardy points out, the cord was made from fibers from the inner bark of trees. Neanderthals intertwined 3 fibers in a counterclockwise direction, then spun them in the opposite direction to create the cord. Deep in a cave, Neanderthals constructed mysterious ring structures 176,000 years ago. Before the arrival of Homo sapiens in Europe, Neanderthals explored the old continent in search of caves, in which to protect themselves from the climate and predators. One of these places is the Brunicle Cave, east of Montauban, southeast of France since 1990. Numerous bones and marks of the passage of these hominids have been found. One of these findings is now described in the journal Nature. At a depth of 336 meters, the researchers found up to 400 stalagmites cut and accumulated in 4 rings. For the team, this did not appear to be a coincidence. By dating its age, the experts calculate that this composition is between 176,000 and 200,000 years old, a period that corresponds to the presence of the first Neanderthals in Europe, and about 140,000 years before the arrival of modern man on the continent. According to the researchers, the finding gives strength to the theory that Neanderthals already used complex expressive skills such as symbolic language. These structures, called speleophacs, by scientists accumulate a total weight of 2.2 tons and 112 meters in length. The Neanderthals aligned them in 4 rows of circles and stacked them, after tearing them from the cave wall. The realization of the rings was carefully planned, say the researchers, because they used stalagmites of similar size. To avoid collapse, the figures were propped up. In addition, traces of construction elements and traces on the walls from which the stalagmites were extracted have been found in the area. But the meaning and function of this composition is a mystery. Being located in the depth of the cave, where light barely reaches, the team, led by Jacques Joubert, professor of prehistory at the University of Bordeaux in France, suggests that it could have ritual purposes, but does not rule out that the Neanderthals used this space to store the water that filtered through the walls. This discovery astonishes researchers, as it is not only the oldest evidence of the Neanderthals' building capacity, but also of their control of fire before the arrival of Homo sapiens in Nura. What do you make of these 3 discoveries? From underneath the streets of London to deep in the Kalahari Desert, these discoveries are sure to impress. Our first discovery delves into the rich ice trade of 18th century London. The second takes us through space to the red planet Mars, and the third discovery takes us back over 100,000 years ago. So today we'll be taking a look at 3 interesting discoveries from all over the place. Ice houses found underneath bustling London Street. There are some things we probably all take for granted nowadays that back 200 years ago, people would have just never had or never been able to have. One of these things you maybe did not think about was ice, or more specifically ice cubes or ice used commercially. During the 18th century in London, the ice trade was massive. It is speculated there were thousands of very small ice houses around London. It was the elite of London that used ice for such things as lavish banquets, medical trade, and also the retail trade. Back then, there was no electricity and ice was not available at the push of a button. So people had to get creative and many had ice shipped in from lakes around the country, keeping them in a cool, contained environment referred to as ice houses. The pinnacle of the ice trade was wealthy establishments transporting only the purest ice from Norwegian lakes to be chipped into customers' glasses. Back in 2018, a huge discovery was made underneath an unsuspecting London street. Not too far from Regent's Park, the earliest known commercial ice house was found, and it did not disappoint archaeologists. After being completely excavated, the ice house, or more appropriately, ice cavern, measures in at 9.5 m deep and 7.5 m wide. It took archaeologists more than 3 months to completely clear the whole thing out. It is thought that during the war, the area had been bombed. The history of the ice house goes back to 1780. It was originally built back by a Samuel Dash, but the ice house really came into its prime around 40 years later when William Leftwich took over. Leftwich was a confectioner at the time and actually became one of the pioneers of the high-end ice trade. It's recorded that in 1822, Leftwich hired a ship and transported 300 tons of the finest Norwegian lake ice back to London. Mysterious rumblings from inside Mars detected by NASA lander NASA's InSight lander detected a mysterious rumbling from inside Mars. While it is unclear currently what these rumblings are, Early reports from scientists are that they could be due to a sudden release of energy from the center of Mars. What scientists do know is that the rumblings are thought to have begun in a place known as Cerberus Foss, place on Mars where there have been two other reports of similar seismic activity. Whilst any similar behavior like this on Earth would more than likely be labeled an earthquake, Marsquakes are not the same thing. According to leading scientist Dr. Kawamura, there are two types of quakes that occur on Mars. One is likened to a moonquake and one similar to that of an earthquake. These rumblings are being compared to more of an Earth-like. The InSight Mars lander had captured similar strong seismic events a year ago. One of the theories is that because Mars has active volcanic regions that can cause similar rumblings, the idea is that these regions are causing the rumblings. The InSight lander's seismometer is incredibly sensitive, and fortunately for scientists, this discovery comes as the windy season on Mars is dying down. Scientists have said that these winds on Mars can directly affect these sensors, so collecting when these storms aren't so disruptive. NASA plans to keep the seismometer active for a couple of months. During that time, they hope that InSight can record some more data that will help scientists better understand this mysterious phenomenon. Crystal found in Kalahari Desert challenges the assumptions about where African human culture arose. This discovery potentially has much larger ramifications on how we believe human culture began and where it began. It has been widely accepted that the first signs of human culture emerged on the coasts of Africa. This discovery challenges that. A collection of around 20 stunning crystals has been found. This collection was made and stored 105,000 years ago, making it the earliest discovery of complex behavior in the history of our species. Before then, other similar discoveries had been made along the coast of Africa, like the 100,000-year-old engraved ochre and 60,000-year-old ostrich eggshells that had been decorated. This new discovery being found in the Kalahari Desert completely flips the coastal theory on its head, and now scientists are questioning the early periods of human history. The discovery was made by a team from Griffith University. There was a total of 22 calcite crystals, all of which had fascinating geometric shapes. Not only were there crystals found, but also 40 different ostrich eggshells were found alongside them, suggesting complex behaviors such as storage and transportation. It's theorized that the eggshells were more than likely used to carry and store water. It is at a level of human ingenuity and innovation was present around 105,000 years ago at this location. Decorating space with crystals and using eggshells to transport water shows that the coastal theory perhaps is not correct, as the Kalahari is quite a way away from any coast. But what do you make of these recent and interesting discoveries from around our world? NASA has said that if life exists on Mars, it will likely be hidden in underground caves. NASA have said that they're going to test this theory. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory research scientists have said that this idea is one that's been heavily discussed, and that they're excited to conduct tests to see if this theory holds up. The surface of Mars is a very oxidizing, radiation-heavy environment where liquid water is not very stable for an extended amount of time. It's the worst place to look for life sites on Mars. Groundwater might be the only habitat for extant life on Mars, if it still exists. Other research has been vocal about the fact that Mars is a harsh environment, being dry, cold, and having large amounts of radiation, or things that go against there being life on Mars. However, some researchers are open-minded and have said that there's a possibility that certain life forms may exist on the red planet. NASA said that underground tunnels could be hard to reach and that small robots might be a good idea, saying that they would be able to reach certain areas on Mars that humans wouldn't be able to. NASA said that over 1,000 potential cave entrances have been mapped on Mars, and this is by the U.S. Geological Survey's Astrogeology Science Center. Researchers at NASA have said that although the robots would be a great idea and could access areas that humans wouldn't be able to reach, they would be extremely expensive to make. Another idea that's been put forward is that a rover could be used to sense and study underground water, with the team saying that overall this would probably be an easy mission. NASA's Penny Boston said the following: "It's pretty clear to me that there's much to be done to seek life, and certainly extinct life in a variety of environments on Mars. I think we all recognize that there's not just a single way to go to search for life on Mars. My own personal opinion is that it's time to learn up missions with what the community is seeing in terms of return on investment versus the difficulty of accessing any particular environment. It's been shown with Mars a campaign to systematically look for water and now probe other aspects of habitat. I think people are often leery of the idea because they think of caves as mines. Mines are dangerous because we've recently made those mines and they're assured by human structure. Penn explained that caves are not as difficult as people might think, and this could be key to better understanding Mars. The European Space Agency, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, and NASA have been working very hard to find out if we're completely alone. Organizations are now sending probes and rovers to distant planets in order to see if it hosts life. These missions repeat the interest of millions of people worldwide, and due to our technology and the various photographs that get sent back, it's caused some to do a little digging of their own. It seems, though, that this is what against the organization, as people from various countries have managed to find mysterious anomalies on and around planets in our solar system. One of the most interesting discoveries is that of the Mars tunnels. This discovery doesn't get much attention, but when it was discovered back in 1999, many people couldn't wrap their heads around what the Mars Global Surveyor captured. When the photographs started to get seen, various theories were put forward. One that received the most attention was that these photographs showed some type of ancient tunnel system. This for some was the proof that they'd been looking for, and that these structures were proof that an ancient civilization had called this place home. Orbiter Surveyor was launched on the 7th of November 1996. It had taken years to build this incredible piece of equipment, but it's noted by NASA as being the first successful mission to the Red Planet in over 20 years. The orbiter finally reached Mars back in March of 1999, where it would then go to map the terrain from a low altitude. Since this date is sent back thousands of images, interestingly, many of which haven't been studied by researchers or scientists, and which some say do hide interesting anomalies that could help us to better understand the planet's environment. During this mission, though, the spacecraft sent back some interesting photographs that some say can't be explained using natural explanations. As mentioned, one of the most interesting ones is that of the monoclast tunnels. These mysterious tunnels had been described as looking like large, impressive structures that didn't naturally occur on the planet. They have the typical shape of what you'd expect a tunnel to look like and are now partially covered by the surface's terrain, causing some to say that these structures are tens of thousands of years old. Interestingly, other high-quality photographs show these tunnels as looking partially transparent. This was one of the first things that people noticed about them, with some saying that because of this translucent-like quality, it made them stand out against the Martian backdrop. Another idea is that these tunnel-like systems were created by giant ice worms. Ice worms are known to live in gravel beds with the banks of glacial ice. Some have suggested that this is what we're seeing here, but on a much larger scale. Again, suggesting that many years ago these creatures existed and carved out these large tunnels. But some have said this doesn't explain why the tubes appear to be partially transparent. This has caused some to put forward the idea that these may have been created by something else. Space agencies have said, though, that these are not tunnels, but rather a natural dune that have developed over the years. NASA even came forward and backed up this statement. David C. Pieri of Earth and Space Sciences Division of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory said that there's nothing mysterious about these glass tunnel anomalies, that what we're looking at is just a Martian dune. So what do you make of these recent announcements and discoveries? The National Aeronautics and Space Administration, more commonly known as NASA, is the largest space exploration agency in the world. With a budget of $22.6 billion for 2020, a key involvement in the space race of the 1950s and its formation in 1958, NASA has prided itself as being at the forefront of space and robotics advancements for decades. The American Space Agency has broken records, made history, and unveiled new information time and time again. Again, owning some of the most famous satellites, rovers, and telescopes. However, the federal agency is not quite as pristine as it may seem. So today, we will be taking a look at 3 discoveries and announcements made by NASA that may detract from its seemingly shiny reputation. Priceless NASA artifacts lost because of poor record-keeping. Being at the forefront of space development and making history time and time again, it is no surprise that NASA has come into possession of items, artifacts, and relics of great scientific and historical importance. You would think that this would warrant top-notch security, though apparently this is a weak point for the U.S. government agency. In October of 2018, the agency was evaluated and a report entitled Audit of NASA's Historic Property was published, in which the agency was criticized for the handling of what was described as heritage assets. The official report included the phrase, "A significant amount of historic and personal property has been lost, misplaced, or taken by former employees and contractors due to the agency's lack of adequate procedures." The audit continues to outline the sociological importance of items that may no longer serve a functional purpose and the need to continue to preserve and protect them. One of the items that has been lost by NASA includes an Apollo 11 lunar collection bag. This was said to contain lunar dust particles, and despite the high profile of this item, it went missing. Eventually, it was found to have been sold for $1.8 million. It was taken into the FBI's possession after being found in the home of a man who was once the Space Center. It was found in the midst of a criminal investigation, worsening this mishap on NASA's behalf. It was later concluded that the item was then sold at a Marshal Service auction. It was only in 2015 that NASA learned about this lunar collection bag having gone astray, when a buyer from an auction requested the space agency confirm its authenticity. NASA then made a request to reclaim the item, though a judge denied it. The bag was auctioned and its whereabouts today remains unknown. Similarly, a prototype of a lunar rover was sold to a scrapyard, disregarding the significance of such a creation. Later on, the rover made an appearance in Alabama, in a residential neighborhood. It was an Air Force historian who made the discovery. When they were reached out to by government officials, they were reportedly cooperative and keen to return the rover to NASA. However, dawdling on NASA's part led to the vehicle being misplaced once again. The Inspector General reported that the individual who had found the rover waited for over 4 months to hear back from the space agency before selling it to a scrap metal company. When NASA officials contacted the company in an effort to purchase the rover, the owner refused, acknowledging the value of the item they possessed. It was sold at an auction, though it is not known how much for or who it went to. Following the audit, NASA confirmed to the Inspector General's office that there would be a more sufficient, more accurate process to handle any items of historical significance. This was due to be implemented following the spring of 2020 in May. While still problematic at the time of the audit, in 2018, NASA security has improved substantially since its early days. In the 1960s and 70s, NASA would happily give what would now be considered historical artifacts away as gifts to employees, astronauts, contractors, and the like, considering them souvenirs. Plenty of items from these decades resurface from time to time within auctions, particularly from the Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo space missions. Hopefully future items will be well cared for, accounted for, and preserved. These artifacts make up our historical progress into space. When these items are missing, so is a part of our history. Moon landing tapes got erased. In 1969, one of the most significant scientific advancements of modern history was made, as man first stepped foot on the moon. Despite the clear importance of such a momentous occasion, the original footage could not be tracked down and was admittedly lost by NASA themselves. In 2005, NASA began to search for the 14-track data was transmitted directly from the moon. When these tapes could not be found, the assumption was that this data had been deleted and the tapes reused after transferring the data elsewhere. This was standard procedure and accepted practice at the time. These tapes included video footage alongside other data collected. On the NASA webpage, theories, criticism, and mania surrounding the sensationalist headlines are addressed, as it is made abundantly clear that this data and information is available and accessible elsewhere. It is only the originals that were not found. The data was related to what was the Manned Spacecraft Center, though is now known as the Johnson Space Center during the mission itself. This, among other locations, recorded the data. There is no missing video footage or other information missing from the Apollo 11 moon landing. However, this questionable cloud has a silver as NASA appeared to be engaged in a battle between the inaccurate headlines of the media. The hunt for the originals overturned higher quality broadcasting containing the video footage. NASA engineer Dick Navska and his team stumbled across this find. He said he and his team was desperate to do something for history, if we could. Kinescopes were found to have been recorded at the National Archives and tapes were uncovered that were sent directly from Houston to CBS. Perhaps not in the original form, but the raw data was archived successfully. Following this successful and relieving discovery, NASA began work with a California company to restore and enhance the original footage, improving the definition and image quality, though this also proved to be a problematic move. With a Hollywood company on board, the rumors that the moon landing was faked, staged, or recorded on a military base grew rampant once again. This company is restoring historic video. It did not tell me where the company was from. Despite the rich rumors and strange headlines, there does not appear to be missing footage of Apollo 11, simply reformatted and discarded originals. All the information is there. NASA loses contact with tiny exoplanet hunting satellite. For years, space exploration teams have searched for exoplanets, looking for climates and conditions that could support intelligent life. The word exoplanet simply refers to planets that orbit a star other than the Sun, like the planets in our solar system do. When tracking down these exoplanets, physicists have been looking for signs of life and climates similar to those on Earth. Was making substantial progress fell out of contact with us on Earth in late 2019. Asteria, or Arc-2 space telescope enabling research in astrophysics, is a small CubeSat spacecraft described as being just the size of a briefcase. Asteria was designed to look for exoplanets and marked a collaboration between NASA and MIT. Furthermore, this little satellite was proof that small crafts can be just as useful in groundbreaking research. The last contact that was made with Asteria was December 5, 2019. Until March 2020, attempts were made to reconnect with the craft, though with little luck. That does not mean the CubeSat satellite was a failure. Launched on November 20, 2017, Asteria sawed through 3 mission extensions, having been expected only to last for 2 months. This ambitious little spacecraft outlived itself time and time again, continuing to work and make progress despite its short life expectancy. Losing contact with a craft that functioned for so much longer than expected is certainly not a point of weakness. These mission extensions were funded in part by the Heising-Simmons Foundation, establishing yet another contributor to this impressive project. NASA officials released a statement on January 3, 2020, in which they explained that Asteria had proved that small satellites are able to conduct searches for large exoplanets. This goal is still being carried out by TESS, the Transiting Exoplanet Survey Satellite. Throughout its mission, Asteria was able to observe stars and collect precise measurements of their brightness. This facilitated research, which revealed that dips in the brightness of a star could indicate a planet passing between the satellite and the star whilst orbiting. Was able to test autonomous technologies using artificial intelligence, observing targets such as Earth, comets, and other spacecrafts. These same procedures can be applied in the future to look for exoplanets in orbit. Asteria is a true example of the common idiom, good things come in small packages, as this tiny satellite completed a lot before we lost signal with the craft. Even the world's most famous space agency, often idolized, has made some major mishaps. With lost artifacts, data, and contact with satellites, there is plenty of criticism thrown its way from even its biggest fans. NASA's work and practices continue to improve, though even in a field of exact sciences, mistakes will continue to be made. Even with flaws and hopes not quite being achieved, some of the research outlined above continues to break records and hold titles that will go, and have gone, down in history. But what do you make of these space discoveries and announcements? Every day people discover strange things that have been under our noses all along. Some of these discoveries are scientifically enlightening, some are bone-chilling, and others are just downright weird. But one thing is for certain: the more we find and uncover, the more we know there is to be found. So today, we will be diving deep into 3 recent discoveries. Homeless man freezes to death. Sometimes it takes a bone-chilling tragedy to enact social change. And that was certainly the case in the heartbreaking story of a man who froze to death in Jackson, Tennessee, in late December of 2020. The winter of that year was incredibly and uncharacteristically cold, with brutal temperatures dropping lower and lower every night and record-setting snowfalls across the entire United States. This left the entire homeless population to either try to find space in increasingly overcrowded temporary shelters or attempt to brave the worsening elements outside in public parks, alleyways, and underneath awnings, desperate for any scrap of warmth or protection from the cold that they could find. And as is the case in Jackson, Tennessee, several cities in the hardest-hit regions were totally unprepared to provide such large-scale assistance, and in some cases had no shelters available at all. The small operations run by churches and charity organizations. Unfortunately for one man, though, those scraps of warmth offered by the trees and awnings were not enough, and he was found frozen and so lost his life. The Jackson Police Department found him in a makeshift tent that he had erected in some trees near a park in downtown Jackson. The official autopsy that was performed confirmed the fact that he had frozen and passed away. And frustration immediately began radiating through the local community, who demanded change and protection for the vulnerable homeless population during the harsh winter. The man in question had been well known and liked in the community, especially as he regularly frequented charity outreaches in an attempt to get what he needed to survive. A representative of one of the organizations who knew that man said that he had given him warm winter clothes only the week before. And still, it was not enough to help brave the uncharacteristically brutal freeze. What the city needed was a shelter where those who needed it could come in off the streets and stay warm, rather than fight for their lives in the harsh winter outside. In fact, a homeless shelter had been in the works with the city government for over a year, and it took the tragic and preventable passing of a resident of the city to force the large city to fast-track such an important piece of legislation. Scott Conger, the mayor of Jackson at the time of the incident, immediately took action, saying, "No one should lose their life that way, and it is not really the government's place to run a shelter like this, but we are certainly looking into what we can do to help facilitate a shelter somewhere in the city." The city then converted the Carl Perkins Civic Center into an emergency warming shelter, where those who needed help could ride out the rest of the tough winter. These horrible winter conditions arrived in the midst of everything that's happened, which forced many churches to close their doors to those seeking shelter, as well as drastically decreased the number of donations that were available for distribution, further worsening the effects of the weather. The tragic and chilling discovery of a man frozen in a public park shocked Jackson residents into action and caused a broken system of aid to begin to remedy itself, proving that cities must look at and address their failures before they cause the passing of other fellow citizens. Largest DNA sequencing of Viking skeletons. Hollywood and popular Viking lore has given most of us a very specific idea of what that group of conquerors looked like and where they were from. Many historians believed that they were seafaring warrior tribes from Scandinavia who banded together to conquer and pillage European villages. Depicted as blonde, brutish invaders of Europe for centuries, breakthrough new DNA evidence has suggested that they might not be as alien as first believed. Esker Villeslev, a fellow of St. John's College, University of Cambridge, and the director of the Lundbeck Foundation Geogenetic Center, recently spent 6 years leading a research project to sequence the largest amount of Viking DNA in history and to uncover the true origins of this infamous but mysterious culture. And what they found shocked them. The DNA sequences of over 400 Viking skeletons from 442 bone fragments revealed that many Vikings may not have been as Nordic as we had believed. For example, many of the Viking skeletons in Scotland turned out to actually be native Scots who were buried as Vikings, presumably after having assimilated into the Viking culture. Additionally, Scandinavian genes had already been mixed with genes from nearby Asia and southern Europe, well before the rise of the Viking conquests, indicating that other people likely came to them before they ever began raids across Europe. Also, most of the Vikings had brown hair rather than the stereotypical blonde. The Vikings had a lot more genes from Southern and Eastern Europe than we anticipated, Villesleeve reported. They frequently had children with people from other parts of the world. In fact, they also tended to be dark-haired rather than blonde, which is otherwise considered an established Viking trait. Essentially, it appeared that the Vikings were less native Scandinavians and more diverse genetically. They shared little DNA with that of the Norse peasants living in their homelands, and were instead influenced by genes from all over their conquering areas. In fact, the current United Kingdom is estimated to contain up to 6% Viking DNA as a result of these early emigrations and intermingling gene pool. Additionally, where it was previously believed that all of the most powerful men and warriors from neighboring tribes and villages would form a band to go on raids, genetic evidence indicates that in fact members of raiding parties were usually closely related family units. One such example was a grave for 4 men who had lost their lives in a battle on the same day, who were revealed to have been brothers through DNA sequencing. One of the most important results of this groundbreaking study is the fact that it gives historians and researchers much better historical context for the previously mysterious Vikings. In a time where extensive mobilization and travel was incredibly rare and nearly impossible, these findings depict just how widespread the Vikings were, shedding some light on how impressive and impactful the age of the Vikings truly was. With these results in mind, researchers and historians can begin revising and adapting their understanding of the age of the Vikings. Roman remains found at York Station, one of the last places you might expect to find traces of the Roman Empire, is underneath a railway station in the United Kingdom. However, that was exactly what happened with the case of York Station, which is halfway between London and Edinburgh, and where human remains were discovered during renovations in December of 2020. Workers who were completing the construction immediately called the British Transport Police to report the discovery of human remains. But when the authorities conducting the investigation realized that the remains were actually thousands of years old, they turned the supposed crime scene over to the York Archaeological Trust for excavation. The remains were nondescript, but amazingly included a skull with almost a full set of teeth, which can tell historians a large amount about the habits and activities of the people that they came from and the society that they lived in. The site of the discoveries, York Station, was first opened in the 1870s and was built in an area that had already been known to be an ancient Roman cemetery, so it was not the first case of remains being unearthed. The cemetery, which contains both inhumation and cremation burials of generally Roman descent, dates back to between the 2nd and 4th centuries AD, although most of it was destroyed in the mid-1800s during the construction of York Station. In fact, the entire area of York has turned up many Roman skeletons through the years, as the Romans occupied the region for a large period of time during the peak of their empire. A gladiator skeleton was discovered under the Yorkshire Museum in 2009, and in 2018 16 skeletons were excavated from beneath the Newington Hotel's swimming pool. A different Roman cemetery was also found nearby in the late 50s, but these remains were excavated and interred in a separate location. The York Station discovery also pales in comparison in 2005, where the remains of 30 men were found with their heads placed around their bodies, and later analysis revealed that none were of Roman ancestry and all had been headless, leading some to believe that they were slaves or prisoners. These discoveries, each more amazing than the last, scattered throughout an urban town in the United Kingdom, but dating back thousands of years to a bygone era that now only exists in law and history books, serves to give us a small glimpse to what life might have been like all those years ago, while simultaneously leaving us wondering at what else could be hidden beneath the sprawling city and pavements. What do you make of these unsettling discoveries? The Greater Tractor refers to an unknown space anomaly discovered to be at the center of a supercluster. Unfortunately, scientists can't explain or get better information regarding the Greater Tractor, as it appears to be in the zone of avoidance, which means that the majority of the space there is completely obscured by the energy created by the Milky Way galaxy. Gravitational measurements, however, show that the Greater Tractor is not only pulling our own galaxy towards it, but all of the nearby galactic superclusters in our area. Although many scientific reports believe that the majority of surrounding space to be moving away from us at increasing speeds, many believe that this might be tied to the gravitational force of the greater tractor, pulling the majority of the galaxies around us into its gravitational well. Estimates believe that the greater tractor is a supermassive black hole that dwarfs the singularity at the center of our galaxy by thousands of light years in distance. However, information surrounding this theory is incredibly limited, and this is by the zone of avoidance, and it looks like scientists won't be able to truly give scientific insight as to the cause until the human race learns the ability to travel outside of the Milky Way galaxy. This means that despite this natural phenomenon being the most influential event on our local humans may never learn the true nature as to its cause for the foreseeable future. NASA said the following about the greater tractor on their website. A busy patch of space has been captured in this image from the NASA ESA Hubble Space Telescope. Scattered with many nearby stars, the field also has numerous galaxies in the background. Located on the border of the Southern Triangle and Norma, this field covers part of the Norma cluster, as well as a dense area of our own galaxy, the Milky Way. The Normal cluster is the closest massive galaxy cluster to the Milky Way and lies around 220 million light-years away. The enormous mass concentrated here in the consequent gravitational attraction means that this region of space is known to astronomers as the Great Attractor, and it dominates our region of the universe. Observing the greater tractor is difficult at optical wavelengths. The plane of the Milky Way, responsible for the numerous bright stars in this image, both outshines with stars and obscures with dust many of the objects behind it. There are some tricks for seeing through this, infrared or radio observations for instance, but the region behind the center of the Milky Way, where the dust is thickest, remains an almost complete mystery to astronomers. End quote. The greater tractor doesn't just affect the Milky Way galaxy, it affects most of the observable galaxies. It's estimated that the greater tractor is over 150 million light-years away, and it's pulling everything nearby towards it. As of right now, no one knows what it is. Every year, space agencies are making incredible discoveries when it comes to space. And one of those is the abundance of planets found throughout the universe. It's nearly impossible for astronomers to get an accurate understanding of our universe, as only a very small portion of it is visible to even the most state-of-the-art telescopes. Much of this invisibility could come from the absorption of photons hidden behind dense clouds of gas, the size of the telescope needed to capture small photons from great distances away, as well as a number of other strange factors surrounding the nature of our universe that we've yet to understand. With this limit on technology, you can imagine the incredible surprise to astronomers when new data surfaced that showed the existence of more than several 100 million new planets close to our galactic supercluster, of which we had no idea ever existed. This discovery was due to one unexpected error. And this was in recent imaging that the Hubble Space Telescope finally got right. Hidden behind star clusters within our Milky Way's halo, there resides a dwarf galaxy only a short 30 million light-years away, 15 times further than that of the Andromeda Galaxy. Not only does this new dwarf galaxy increase the size of our immediate galactic neighborhood, but it also appears to be heading towards the same direction as the Milky Way galaxy, which would grow to the size of our galaxy in a short 20 billion years. Interestingly, NASA scientists have said that there's over 100 billion planets in the Milky Way galaxy alone. There's hundreds of millions of galaxies, all teeming with millions or billions of planets. This makes the likelihood of there being life in our universe very high. This is why NASA and other space agencies are now making it their goal to visit various star systems, in the hopes of finding life. One planet of particular interest is that of Kepler 452b. It's an exoplanet that's been coined as Earth's cousin. It was discovered by the Kepler Space Telescope, and NASA announced its discovery in July 2015. For many years, the conversation of finding another planet capable of supporting life has been relevant. So it's much heavier and denser. NASA has confirmed that due to the larger size of Kepler 452b, the gravitational pull is also stronger than Earth's. It's been predicted that its surface is either rocky or icy and gaseous. Kepler 452b orbits a Sun-like star, similar to the way Earth orbits the Sun. The main issue confronting the exploration and further discovery of Kepler 452b is that it's incredibly far away from Earth. It's around 1,400 light-years away, meaning it would take a spacecraft approximately 26 million years to reach. This is a huge deterrent in learning more about Kepler 452b, because we currently lack the transportation to get there. Unfortunately, this also means that current telescopes are very limited in their ability to determine more about the atmosphere or the condition of this planet. It's been predicted that Kepler 452b could possibly sustain life due to its supposed similarities to Earth. NASA has stated that one of the main things a planet must have to support life is the ability for water to form on the surface of the planet. So what do you make of these recent space mysteries and discoveries? Humans and chimps share 98.8% of their DNA. They are our closest relatives, and we share more DNA with them than any other great ape. Researchers have just announced that an all-out tour has been observed between a group of chimpanzees and gorillas. Something that's quite surprising is these two groups have never been seen doing this before. It's a first, and something that researchers have said is that it's really sad. The incident happened in the Luangong National Park back in 2019, with the study going on to report that it happened more than once. Those who were close by when it happened reported that it was the chimpanzees who first attacked, saying that they outnumbered the gorillas. Researchers who gathered data from the attack said that it was strange that this happened, and that they're working to get to the bottom of why both the chimps and gorillas were much more aggressive than normal. Both times an infant gorilla passed away due to injuries. A new study that's looking at the fighting between the two is being carried out by researchers who are on the scene, with them saying that although the aggression is strange, and that it hasn't been seen before, they have some theories why this may have happened, which include the two groups being territorial or competing for food sources. Tobias Denschers from the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology in Germany said the following: our observations provide the first evidence that the presence of chimpanzees can have a lethal impact on gorillas. We now want to investigate the factors triggering these surprisingly aggressive interactions. End quote. We are constantly learning more and more about chimpanzees. But one thing that researchers have noticed is that when pushed they can be very aggressive and would even take on humans if they stand in their way. This has been demonstrated in areas around Uganda, which are losing their habitat. And some wildlife experts have said that the chimpanzees know who is responsible. They've observed humans pulling down the local forests, and they've said that it's angered the chimps so much that they've decided to spark a conflict between humans and apes. The researchers observing the chimps have said that it's almost as if they've had enough, and that they've been observed watching humans from a distance while they tear down the forest. One of the first incidents was recorded when the chimps were seen near the forest and heading towards the nearby crops. Due to their habitat loss, the chimps were able to come much closer to the edge of the forest and see whether humans would return. Scouts were then said to follow some of the humans back, and this is where they found the nearby crops. Once they found this, the group was called in and they started to raid the area. The group were able to take plenty of crops for themselves and even attack the humans. This bold move was successful, and it only gave the chimps more confidence. This, along with other traits, has made experts put forward the theory that chimps won't back down from a conflict, especially if they know that they're getting something out of it. The incident in Luangwa happened back in February of 2019, and it involved a group of 18 chimpanzees and 5 gorillas. The incident happened when the two were passing into each other's territories, with the battle lasting just under an hour. The next meeting between the two groups happened in December 2019, and it lasted an hour and 20 minutes. This happened because a chimpanzee encountered a gorilla while it was doing a border patrol. Those who witnessed the event said that because the chimps outnumbered the gorillas, they were able to separate an adult female gorilla from its infant, which eventually led to it losing its life. The other gorillas were able to retreat, but it's noted that the chimpanzees did also sustain various injuries. The wildlife experts said it was sad to see the two groups fight, and that, as of right now, they're working to better understand what could have caused this encounter to escalate. Tobias said the following. Simon Picker from Germany said the following. We are only at the beginning to understand the effects of the competition on interactions between the two gray tape species. Our study shows that there is still a lot to explore and discover about our closest living relatives, and that Luangong National Park with its unique mosaic habitat is a unique place to do so. The research on the two groups was published in scientific reports. The battle between a silverback gorilla and a chimpanzee would normally go one way, and that would be in favor of the large silverback gorilla. Gorillas are also the world's largest primates, but working out how strong they are is difficult. Many sites report that a gorilla can live from 4 to 30 times their body weight, but wildlife experts have said this number is closer to 10 to 15 times their body weight. They also have one of the strongest bite forces in the animal kingdom, but this doesn't come down to their teeth, but rather the massive neck muscles. The average weight of a gorilla is 140 kilograms, but they can weigh up to 267. When compared to that of an adult lion, it's estimated that a silverback gorilla is over 4 times as strong. Its bite force is also twice that of a lion's. The difference between a chimpanzee and a gorilla is that the much larger gorilla is actually much more calm, and the chimp is much more unpredictable. Gorillas have shown great sophistication when they're in the wild, but chimps seem to be more intelligent. The researchers have said that it's likely that this battle in the Luangong National Park will continue all the time the two groups are encountering each other. So what do you make of this battle? Jerusalem is an important place for many people. It's widely considered one of the holiest places in the world, and every year between 3 and 5 million people visit the holy city. According to the New Testament, Jesus was brought to Jerusalem as a child, and since then those who have visited the ancient city have said they felt a connection. One thing it's not known for is that of mysterious flying crafts. It's odd to think that the two are linked, but every year people who visit and live around Jerusalem report seeing mysterious flying objects. Online groups are some of the best places to find these objects, and because the majority of them don't reach the mainstream media, many people never see them and most of these photographs go unseen. One recent image that made its way to an online group was this one, and it shows a strange-looking craft above Jerusalem. The person who posted the image explained that they were watching a live cam of the area and said that they noticed a large-looking craft hovering near the cloud line, estimating it was there for around 20 seconds or so before it quickly vanished. They said the following about the image. As I was watching the live cam, I suddenly noticed something close to their clouds. This thing emerged because it looked like part of the cloud covering had moved, which then revealed the craft that appeared to be hiding behind it. The only way I can describe it is that this thing was dark in the clouds and was in the shape of a pipe. As I watched it, I could tell that it was just hovering there and that it looked like it was disappearing every second or so. Although I think this was because the clouds were passing over it, which meant it was being partially concealed. After watching the craft for around 20 seconds or so, it then darted to the left of the screen out of view. I'm not sure what this thing was, but it didn't look like anything you'd normally see in the sky. It doesn't match any helicopter, plane, or drone that I've seen. Due to the recent reports of strange-looking objects above and around Jerusalem, it's caused some to label this place as a hotspot, with some locals reporting that they'll often see fast-traveling objects in the sky that appear to vanish, large orbs that can be seen pulsating different colors, and large ships that have the ability to travel at extremely fast speeds, or while staying completely silent. It's for this reason that some amateur researchers have said that this place deserves the title of being called a hotspot, and that every year reports seem to increase. As with the majority of places that report these kinds of activity, capturing them on camera is notoriously difficult, especially if they're high in the sky or traveling at fast speeds. Phone cameras aren't built to take photographs of small objects in the sky. The minute people try to do this, the end result usually comes out blurry. This has been tested time and time again, and even trying to video or photograph a plane in the sky is extremely difficult. These long cigar-shaped crafts are actually one of the most reported crafts, along with the auburn disk. Eyewitnesses who see them often report these crafts as being long, black or gray in color, slender, silent, and also able to travel at high speeds. The issue that many amateur researchers have is trying to figure out what these things are, as no one has come forward to claim that it's them who's behind the sightings. One of the most interesting things about these crafts is that of their shape. They don't really match anything that we have in our skies. The only thing they could be compared to is that of an airship. But these are notoriously slow and can't vanish within the blink of an eye, with the top speed of these things coming in at around 17 miles per hour. The origins of these mysterious aircrafts are definitely not new, and they actually go way back before the invention of the airplane, with researchers saying that these were one of the first reported crafts that were seen in our sky that couldn't be explained. One person recently sent me the following message. I have a sighting that I'd like to share with you. I don't want to tell anyone I know about this because it goes against my beliefs. For the last few nights, I've been seeing these strange lights above Jerusalem. I live very close by and I've never seen anything like it. The objects looked like they're lodge balls that will pulsate. I could see them flying around in the air at high speeds. Oddly though, they weren't making any sound while doing this. They would occasionally pulsate and then roam the area again. It almost looked like the lights were searching for something. They weren't just flying randomly. They were dipping down and then back up again. I tried to take some photographs, but the lights were not very big, and they weren't showing up on the camera very well. It just looked like a blur when I saw the images. I've done some research online and I can see that others have seen strange lights in the sky above Jerusalem. I don't know what it was, but I thought I'd share my experience with you. End quote. This eyewitness sounds like they saw an orb. These crafts are known within UFO circles as they've been witnessed by many people. These glowing orbs come in a variety of different colors, ranging from blue, red, orange, yellow, pink, silver, green, and black, and most people who have seen them have said they appear to pulsate and that they can fly at extremely fast speeds. Those that have seen them have said they look to be under intelligent control, and that due to how fast they fly, it's near impossible to get a high-quality photograph. UFO researchers have looked into these reports and said that these crafts are some of the most interesting ones, with some saying that they remind them of hyper-advanced drones. So what do you make of these interesting stories? Disappearances are terrifying. Having a loved one disappear is the worst thing of all. Not knowing whether they have lost their life, are injured, or just missing is a draining, frightening experience. So today we'll be taking a look at two disappearances and a mythological marvel. Ancient hemlock tree floating in Crater Lake. Legends are as old as humanity itself. One legend of Native American origin describes a battle between the gods Lau and Skell that was believed to have occurred 7,700 years ago in Oregon. On Mount Mazama, Lau spit magma after being rejected by a chief's daughter. Skell fought back by blowing up the summit of the mountain, forcing Lau back underground where he belonged. Oregon's Crater Lake is fabled to have been formed in honor of Skell. The Crater Lake served as the location for strange happenings, with people reporting ghost sightings for generations. There are stories of abandoned, ever-burning campfires, nighttime terrors, and most infamously, the Old Man of the Lake. This is an ancient hemlock tree that floats in the watery crater and has done for over a century, always upright and stable despite its nomadic nature. In 1902, the Crater Lake was declared a national park. It was in this same year that geologist Joseph S. Diller reported his sighting of the hemlock tree 6 years prior near Wizard Island. The hemlock tree is bleached from the sun and is splintered. It floats 4 feet above the waterline, but the old man's body is sunken 30 feet below the depths. It appears but is mobile. To our lookers, it seems the tree is supernatural, moving differently from our fundamental understanding of science. The tree's travel patterns are fascinating, and several people have attempted to track the old man's movements. In 1938, John Doerr dedicated almost a quarter of the year observing it. Doerr wrote of the tree's patterns, "The Doha managed to record the tree moving a shocking 62 miles in 2 months, could travel at the speed of almost 4 miles per day. It didn't take long for the old man to become a mythical superstar. Local folk flocked to see it. The locals claimed that the old man controlled the weather, that the tree was a deity or nature spirit that protected the crater. In 1988, scientists attempted to get rid of the tree, believing it to be an eyesore and dangerous to tourists. But their attempts to remove it were combated by a sudden storm. The scientists, frightened by the phenomenon, left. Allegedly, the skies cleared immediately afterwards. Researchers believed a landslide brought the tree to the crater since, or as prior and seabed rocks locked it in place. This theory stems from other trees at Spirit Lake by Mount St. Helens. However, the old man is free to move at will. It is not trapped in one place like those trees are. The old man, against all odds, remains balanced whilst avoiding natural erosion and sinking. It is said that the tree is perfectly balanced between light and dark, representing the fight between the gods. As for its depth, the old man stretches 1,943 feet, 3 times the length of the Eiffel Tower. When analyzed, the tree was found to be 500 years old, but it could be older. David Grimes, a ranger, happily shows off the old man during his boat tours. When questioned about his own theory, Grimes stated his belief that the refreshing cold water in the lake keeps the wood rejuvenated. According to Grimes, the old man has character, a story and history, and he, along with the other rangers, treasured the tree as a vital part of the park. He is a creepy sight with an even more alarming story, and yet some people, such as Grimes, find its presence calming. The chilling disappearance of Sammy Burlka vacations are supposed to be abundant with family fun and timeless memories. But for a certain family, a would-be exciting trip turned into a living nightmare. Sammy Burlka was an 8-year-old boy and the son of Kenneth Burlka. When talking about his son, Kenneth described him as a passionate but stubborn young boy who was on the high-functioning side of the autistic spectrum, which resulted in Sammy being easily overwhelmed by brightness and sound. The boy stood at 4 feet and 11 inches in height and weighed an estimated 85 pounds. He had dark eyes and brown hair cut in a short hairstyle. The family was staying in a cabin near Diamond Lake when the tragedy occurred. He disappeared in October. The Burlka family had prior camping experience and Sammy grew up learning important survival tricks, but no amount of teaching could ensure a vulnerable child's survival in the vast wilderness of Oregon. Kenneth and Sammy went out to play a game of either tag or hide and seek at around 4 in the afternoon. The reason for this roadside game is unknown and Kenneth's motives have since been suspected as impure. The father and child played until Sammy spotted a radiant shade of yellow peeking out from the ground, believing it to be gold. Due to the autumn period, it was already getting dark and Kenneth wanted to go to their cabin, heading off to the cinder slope where they had been playing moments prior. As Kenneth Burker went to his car, he assumed his son would follow, but he did not. Instead, Sammy vehemently refused to leave or even step off the cinder slope and began running away from his father when he tried to chase after him. It is assumed that Sammy believed Kenneth was just playing with him. After the fact, Kenneth stated, "I never caught up with him, and at that point he disappeared over the top somewhere and I lost him." After Sammy's disappearance was reported, over 200 people helped with the area's search for the boy, traveling and combing a total area of 4,000 acres. An entire week passed by with trained dogs and even the use of helicopters, but it was to no avail. Never again would Sammy be seen by anyone. Kenneth's story has been criticized by police and speculators alike. It seems suspicious that a young autistic boy seemed to suddenly run from his father and disappear in plain sight by running straight into the wilderness without any other witnesses. However, no proof of foul play was ever discovered. Jason Jalkowski's disappearance. June is the favorite season of many people. The midsummer is the perfect time to unwind. Jason Jalkowski was doing just that when he picked up the phone. Jason, 19 at the time, was called by his boss from the restaurant he worked at asking if he could come in early. Jason was described as a hardworking man, but a hailstorm damaged his car and prohibited him from getting to work as he worked 4 miles away from his home. His boss organized for a coworker to pick him up at the local school, but he never made it to meet with the coworker. After 15 minutes of waiting for him to arrive, Jason's coworker called their boss to inform him he was not there. She returned to work another 15 minutes later. Jason never came to work. Jason's family came home and found him still missing. The family searched for their son. Jason was a religious teenager and not the running away from home type. An honor student at his old school. He did, however, have a mild disability when it came to slurring and speech. He was in financial trouble and required jobs to keep afloat. Jim and Kelly, Jason's parents, were convinced that something disastrous must have happened. He never skipped work and was not with any of his friends either. The following morning, his family reported him as missing, but the police refused to help, telling the parents that the teen likely just went out with friends for the weekend and would surely return. The family and friends of Jason went looking for him, putting up posters and even having news of his disappearance run in the local radio station. By this point, the group of Jason's loved ones were certain he was hurt, if not fearing the worst. No news of his whereabouts ever turned up, but it forced the police into action, and although it was belated, they gave the investigation their all. But by then it was too late to find worthwhile evidence. There was no evidence at all. He simply vanished, no clues to follow. 2 weeks from his initial disappearance, the police got word of a boy with his description seen at the Mahoney State Park, but found nothing to prove he had been there. The family did everything in their power to find their son, with Kelly even beginning the organization Protect Jason to raise awareness. Now, 20 years later, his case continues to baffle investigators. Jason lacked funds to leave and begin a new life, nor was he the kind of man to do so. He also planned on working that day, and his car was being repaired. Since he went missing, his bank account and social security number have remained untouched. His family refused to believe the theory that he took his life due to his religious faith, and he was an upbeat individual who presented no sign of sorrow. They believe, to this day, that he was taken and someone had ended his life, with nobody ever found. Disappearances are one of the hardest things families have to go through. Hope can be both a blessing and a curse. People disappear every single day, with cases sometimes forever remaining unsolved. Others can be solved decades afterwards, but the only certainty is uncertainty. What do you make of the phenomenon of the lake and the sad disappearances of these young lives? The Dead Sea Scrolls, sometimes referred to as the Qumran Cave Scrolls, are a series of ancient Jewish and Hebrew religious manuscripts. These texts include manuscripts from Judean desert sites and date back as far as the 8th century, making them the second oldest known surviving manuscripts. In fact, the most recent of these ancient texts was written in only the 11th century, reinforcing their historical, cultural, and religious value. Have been written in a number of languages, primarily Hebrew, but also Aramaic dialect variations, Greek, Latin, and Arabic. In the Dead Sea area, around 900 fragments of the scrolls have been uncovered. Most contain only short pieces of text, having been damaged over time through both natural means and human impact. However, a small handful have remained well preserved, surrounding these scrolls in mystery and prestige. So today, we will be taking a look at 3 recent advancements in the research surrounding the famous, important Dead Sea Scrolls. Mysterious second writer of Dead Sea Scroll was uncovered by AI. From one document, an artificial intelligence detected subtle orthographical differences in the handwriting, suggesting there were 2 scribes contributing to this particular manuscript, not the one we had once thought. A statistical analysis indicated that there were minor differences between the writing styles within one Dead Sea Scroll manuscript. The AI research confirmed that the penmanship was that of 2 separate writers. Preliminary explanations for the similarity are simply that the 2 scribes could have trained or been taught in a similar manner, such as attending the same school. Principal investigator Mladen Popovich, who led this study, is a professor of the Hebrew Bible and Ancient Judaism at the University of Groningen, based in the Netherlands. He describes this research as just the first step. He elaborates by explaining that being able to pinpoint individual scribes will open the door to study all the scribes behind the Dead Sea Scrolls and put us in a new and potentially better position to understand what kind of collection or collections of manuscripts we are dealing with here. He believes that the involvement of AI presents just the first breakthrough of dozens. Scribes of the manuscripts did not sign their names, and with more than 900 manuscripts found, the number of authors contributing has long remained an elusive figure. Popovich outlines the procedure of identifying scribes prior to the employment of AI. He claims that singling out a defining characteristic in the formation of each letter could be deemed a smoking gun, creating a specific handwriting profile that could be used in order to identify a particular writer. This was a highly flawed approach to dividing up a manuscript into its different writers, due to the subjective nature. Were no concrete answers, resulting in a high level of debate amongst scholars. These criticisms led to the data-backed approach seen today, with AI confirming handwriting differences throughout the Great Isaiah Scroll. The Great Isaiah Scroll has been incredibly well preserved. It dates back to 125 BC and measures 24 feet by 10 inches, complete with 54 columns of text written in Hebrew. This scroll contains some mysterious aspects. The small break in the pages, though it had seemingly been sewn back together. The AI conducted a process called a neural network analysis. This found that within the 54 columns of text, there were two entirely unique groups that each section fell into. Further supporting this theory is that the switch between the two groups was approximately halfway through the manuscript, suggesting a clear-cut divide between scribes where one took over from the other. Even when looking at fragments or just small parts of the individual letters, clear differences can be seen. Further testing the accuracy of their findings, researchers added additional noise to the data, though the same results appeared repeatedly. Following the initial tests, heat maps were used to create two average versions of different characters before and after the alleged shift. Here, according to Popovich, the results are statistically significant. Popovich implies there is plenty of practical information to be gained from this research, including what he describes to be the cultural evolution of the Hebrew Bible. Dead Sea Scrolls include a guide to a hidden treasure. Between the hundreds of Dead Sea Scroll manuscripts, there is one that stands out above the rest, inviting more questions and theories: the Copper Scroll. The majority of the Dead Sea Scrolls have been written on parchment, papyrus, or animal skins, with their messages conveyed in ink. The Copper Scroll, however, is made out of copper and engraved to carry its message. Some have theorized the Copper Scroll was intended to stand the test of time, being legible and accessible for much longer than the manuscripts recorded on parchment. It is believed by some that across the Copper Scroll is a treasure map guiding the way to a store of gold and silver riches. It depicts 64 hiding places throughout Israel, in which these treasures and riches of gold and silver are kept tucked away, safely hidden. The Copper Scroll is an unusual range of vocabulary and a whole host of strange spellings. Even with the manuscript leading the way, we have been unable to uncover any of the gold alluded to by the Copper Scroll. Some people suggest this is due to it being taken in the 1st century by Romans, whilst others believe that the treasure may never have been there at all. However exciting the prospect of hidden treasure may be, some people are skeptical about the authenticity of the must have been the gold and silver of the temple. This would mean that the Copper Scroll may not truly lead to the riches of the Ascents, who are generally believed to have owned the treasure according to the Copper Scroll, as this group rejected the temple and the authority of priests, likely leaving them without riches of this grandeur to speak of. Others believe the location of the scroll, the Judean desert, and the cliff face above the Dead Sea are keeping with expectations of the Ascents. But not other cultural groups, giving some evidence that the treasure may have belonged to them after all. Archaeologists are yet to find any treasures to speak of, and there is little concrete evidence to support who the treasure truly belongs to. The secret to miraculous preservation of a Dead Sea Scroll could be salt coating. The Dead Sea Scrolls are inarguably valuable artifacts, making their preservation and good condition following their discovery vital. Recent findings may have some more answers and more suggestions as to how some of these manuscripts are in such pristine condition and why some appear to be worsening following our human intervention. One fragment of one of the most famous manuscripts appeared upon inspection to be covered in a strange combination of sulfate salts. While some think this may be the secret to the good condition of some of the Dead Sea Scroll manuscripts, Others have suggested that the sulfate coating could make the manuscripts more sensitive when exposed to subtle adjustments to their environment, such as humidity. One research paper in Science's Advances suggested an approach in which a greater emphasis is placed on understanding the construction and chemistry surrounding ancient techniques to craft parchment. They also highlight that this may prevent forgers from being considered with sincerity. The current understanding of the sulfate salt coating is that the Essence, aiming to protect the scrolls from destruction, hid them in a series of caves. From the caves, natural limestone and similar conditions aided their preservation, allowing natural preventative chemical reactions to take place at a slow rate. Admir Masick, one co-author of the research paper who works at MIT, has suggested that the Dead Sea Scrolls have begun to decline in their quality of preservation following the attempts to soften the scrolls in order to open them, as well as the shift in environment into museums. Masick highlights the necessity of the Dead Sea Scrolls as he states, "We are that cover a fantastic period where Christianity was born. That means they are extremely valuable from a historical perspective. The most well-preserved is the Temple Scroll. This outlines some biblical context, such as plans for a Jewish temple, though the focus of the Temple Scroll is often its construction. Why is it so well maintained? Parchment was usually made from animal skin, with the hair and fat removed, and then scraped clean and stretched to dry. Temple Scroll, however, seems to be written on the reverse of the parchment on the flesh side and was possibly split into 2 layers whilst writing. Even more spectacularly, the Temple Scroll remains untouched by modern man-made preservations, meaning there is no damage to the original scroll. Overall, there is a broad range of factors that may feed into the successful preservation of such artifacts, though the natural contributors appear to be the most significant. Dead Sea Scrolls present a paramount research opportunity from archaeology to religion to linguistics to history. These scrolls tell us about the past and give us a chance to learn about future preservation and technological advancements too. But what do you think of the Dead Sea Scroll discoveries? It's no secret that the world is filled with unusual and mysterious objects and beings. As humans, our curiosity has led us to discover more and more over time. So today, we'll be taking a look at how drones are helping us look into our history and astronomers into our future. The drone finds a lost tomb with 72 ancient skeletons. On Canary Island, a drone has found a lost tomb with about 72 ancient skeletons. The tomb contains the remains of ancient people thought to be from a probably lost pre-Hispanic civilization. It was discovered by a group of amateur archaeologists around the holiday island of Gran Canaria. These mummified remains belong to natives of the Guanche society. The discovery was made possible through the use of a drone. The drone was deployed by a team of researchers who are members of the amateur archaeology group called El Lagadu. This group was formed by Iosi Heimer Gonzalez, John A. Garcia, and Jesus Diaz. This team of archaeologists deployed their drones on a research mission which somehow and unexpectedly led to the discovery of the cave through the drones. Gonzalez, one of the members of the team, described how they were able to make this discovery. He said, "This amazing discovery at the island of Gran Canaria consisted of 62 adult skeletons and 10 newborns. They were discovered in a ravine on the island, which is part of the Spanish Canary Islands. Archaeologists confirmed this discovery and have tried to link them to the Guanche civilization. They have also tried to date these ancient remains and were able to date them back to between 800 and 1000 AD. The ancient people of Guanche were believed to be the original inhabitants of the Canary Islands, and it is believed that the people of Guanche migrated from North Africa. Many historians believe that the people of Guanche were accepted into the Spanish society, who later integrated them both ethnically and culturally into the Spanish settlement. This was after they settled and colonized small islands. One of the archaeologists supervising the discovery, Veronica Alberto, told local media the following: "There are many burial caves in Gran Canaria, but not many like this one. The discovery of the newborn remains is important as they were not included in previous findings until very recently. We now know they can be found in these types of cave burials. Archaeologists subsequently went down to the burial site and discovered traditional burial shrouds that were made partly from some vegetable fibers and some animal skins. Alberto further added that we can confirm that all the pre-Hispanic people in the Canary Islands were prepared the same way for the burial ceremony. Archaeologists dug as far as 75 feet below sea level to reach the tomb, only to discover more than 5 dozen skeletal remains that have now been analyzed and studied. The cave was discovered back in June 2019, but they did not make any report about it, because they feared if they reported it the facility might be vandalized. But 1 year after the discovery, they announced to the general public that they had begun work on the site. Gonzalez further explained that the cave should be closed off and preserved with the bones left there to respect the site. We decided to report it because we want the local authorities to preserve and respect it. Astronomers find huge star clusters in our cosmic backyard. Another interesting discovery was made far away from Earth. A cluster of huge stars has been discovered lurking in the Milky Way galaxy. The Milky Way galaxy is a relatively short cosmic distance from our solar system. It was estimated that the huge cluster of stars called Valparaiso 1 is about 75 million years old. It is considered an open cluster with an estimated mass of about 10,000 solar masses worth of stars when it first blazed into existence. It is estimated that these clusters of stars are about 7,000 light-years away from us. Many of the stars in these areas can barely be seen, but with the help of a telescope in your back garden, they can be detected. But this has not always been the case, as it has for some time escaped our observation until recently. The discovery of these phenomenal structures is an interesting. Astronomers believe it reveals that this missing link of open clusters could have simply been evading detection, and quite easily too. Ricardo Dauda, an astrophysicist with the Instituto de Astrofísica de Canarias in the Canary Islands, reported that there have been previous searches to identify open clusters, but to no avail. The Valparaiso 1 did not look like a cluster, and this was why it was not discovered before. An open cluster is defined as a group of stars born together from the same molecular cloud of gas and dust. They are of a similar age and chemical composition, and they move together through their home galaxy. Trying to identify these clusters is not always easy because the distances and the galactic orbit of the Milky Way galaxy is not always easy to work with. As a result, a team of researchers began looking into how they could identify and analyze this latest discovery. The team was led by astronomer Ignacio Nicariola from the University of Alicante in Chile, and they were aided in their search with the help of the Gaia satellite. The Gaia satellite is a probe that has spent the last several years mapping the Milky Way in 3 dimensions with a high degree of precision. They were able to determine not just the position of these stars, but were also able to analyze them. Among other things, they discovered that the stars were moving together even as they orbit through the galactic center. NASA announces that we are going back to Venus with 2 new missions by 2030. One of the latest announcements in 2021 comes from NASA. The space agency has announced that there will be 2 new missions to the planet Venus. The plan is to launch the mission towards the end of the decade. Among other things, the mission will help unravel how one of the Earth's closest planetary neighbors became a hellscape while our own thrived. This was confirmed by Bill Nelson, the new administrator of the project. He said that these 2 sister missions have a common aim of understanding how the planet Venus became an inferno-like world, capable of melting lead at the surface. He further stated that the mission would offer the entire science community the chance to investigate a planet we have not been to in more than 30 years. NASA has already started preparing the mission, as the project has already been awarded around $500 million under NASA's Discovery program, and each is expected to launch in the 2028 to 2030 timeframe. The process of awarding the project was scrutinized as both missions were picked from a competitive, peer-reviewed process that was based on the feasibility of their plans and their scientific values. The first project was TAG Da Vinci of Noble Gases, Chemistry and Imaging Plus. The missions would gather some more information about the nature and composition of the planet. The project would also study primarily the carbon dioxide atmosphere of the planet and learn how it formed and evolved. The mission would seek to determine if the planet once had an ocean. A descent sphere will plunge through the dense atmosphere which is laced with sulfuric acid clouds. The mission would like the noble gases present in the planet and other elements to learn what gave rise to the runaway greenhouse effect we see today. It is also expected that Da Vinci Plus would, among other objectives, transmit back to Earth the first high-resolution images of the planet's tesserae, geological features roughly comparable with Earth's continents, whose existence suggests Venus has tectonic plates. It is expected that the results from this project would help reshape our understanding of terrestrial planet formation. The second project was tagged Veritas, an acronym for Venus Emissivity, Radioscience, INSAR Topography, and Spectroscopy. The project aims to map the Venusian surface from orbit and delve into the planet's geological history. With the aid in the form of radar used to create three-dimensional constructions, it will chance surface elevations and confirm whether volcanoes and earthquakes are still happening on the planet. It would also utilize infrared scanning to determine the rock type, which till now is unknown. It would also determine if active volcanoes were still releasing water vapor into the atmosphere. The mission is NASA-led, but the German Aerospace Center will provide the infrared mapper, while the Italian Space Agency and France's Space Center will contribute to the radar and other parts of the mission. What do you make of the skeleton cave and the mission to Venus? We see a whole host of interesting and strange discoveries with each passing day. As science constantly advances and researchers continue to draw closer to the answers they may be looking for, our world becomes a little more peculiar and a little more fascinating as we begin to understand more about it. From the busiest cities to the most remote continents, there is an abundance of research opportunities. Sometimes, the most scientifically active places are the ones you may least expect. So today, we will be taking a look at 3 interesting discoveries from tucked-away locations. Lost continents beneath Antarctica and veiled in old satellite. Sometimes, the newest discoveries can come from the most unlikely places. A satellite that is no longer in use was able to point researchers towards ancient continents that were yet to be discovered. This was after old data underwent a new analysis. The Gravity Field and Steady-State Ocean Circulation Explorer, or GOES, mission's data was analyzed again in 2018, 9 years after its initial launch. The second look over this data has shown cratons in the lithosphere. This essentially means that in between the mantle and crust of Earth, there are some rocky areas that we had not guessed were there. Scientists seem to believe that the cratons, or rocky areas, that have been found are leftover structures that had formed ancient continents, and further research into them could provide an insight into how the continents we know today are composed. An official statement made from those involved in the study at the European Space Agency explained the potential for a modern application of this research and how it may particularly aid our understanding of Antarctica due to its close proximity. The co-author of the research paper, Fausto Furcioli, and science leader of geology and geophysics at the British Antarctic Survey described Antarctica's composition as an exciting mosaic of geological features. He goes on to explain that throughout East Antarctica there is an observable array of similarities that can be seen in the Antarctic crust and the crust of the continents it was once joined to 160 million years ago. The GOES satellite was in orbit between March 2009 and November 2013 before it was declared not working. Satellites are built to have a short lifespan at the moment, between 5–15 years, as designing them with longevity in mind is a complex task due to the inconsistency in solar arrays or simply running out of fuel. When active, GOES was built to observe changes, fluctuations, and variations in the gravity on Earth, no matter how minuscule they may have appeared. The data collected produced a worldwide global gravity map. It also revealed that there were local changes in gravity, with a small resolution of 80 kilometers. The new analyses unearthed the ancient continents when a map of shape indexes was created by researchers at the British Antarctic Survey and Kiel University. When making this research more accessible, the European Space Agency compared the space indexes to contours you might see on a map. Jörg Ebbing, a geophysicist working with Kiel University in Germany, elaborated on the necessity of looking at both the gravitational data and the seismological data simultaneously in order to ensure more consistency and accuracy when producing images of both the crust and upper mantle of the Earth. Creating these images and 3D modeling is necessary for researchers to do if they want to understand the mechanics behind how plate tectonics and the deep mantle interact. The next step in this research is to see how the ancient continents are impacting modern-day Antarctica and how climate change could affect these ancient continents in their dormant state. Researchers hope the gravity gradients, which have been freshly scoured through, can help find some answers. The discovery of ancient continents and gravitational variations is certainly not a simplistic field of study, but one with great promise and an exciting future ahead of it. Penguin poop is so pink it can be seen from space. Everyone's favorite animal at the zoo, the beloved flightless bird, the penguin, could be ditching its classic monochrome look. Mixing up the characteristic black and white feathered color scheme is the news that their poo is pink, so much so that it can be seen from space. There are 4 penguin species in Antarctica that live and breed on the continent: Adelie, Chinstrap, Emperor, and Gentoo. Though the Adelie penguins seem to have one fairly distinct trait: their poo. Adelie penguins love to feed on krill and small crustaceans, which are pink. With so much of the Adelie diet being krill, their excrement, or technically speaking, their guano, turns a pink-red color. This rather vibrant hue then stains the ground, the penguins themselves, and a great deal of any surroundings. Though their stain-worthy droppings have proved relatively useful scientifically speaking. The Adelie guano can be seen from space, and the distinctive pink tone is picked up and seen on satellite imagery where individual penguins are not. Many scientists are aiming to count the Adelie and gain a rough understanding of their population, though with some rather remote homelands, this can be a difficult task to say the least. Satellite imagery is unable to show us each individual penguin, but where they have been, there is a telltale pink stain on the landscape. Heather Lynch, an ecology professor at Stony Brook University, spoke at the American Geophysical Union Conference, in which she explained that the area the guano stains cover allows them to estimate how many Adelie penguins were in that specific area. This new technique has allowed teams like Lynch's to uncover entire colonies of Adelie penguins. One group, Endangered Islands, was found reaching 1,500,000 penguins that had not been counted towards the Adelie population yet. Now, researchers are retracing Adelie history, aiming to track fluctuations in their population throughout time in the Antarctic. It is hoped that this monitoring of the Adelie penguins will prove useful in assessing the condition of the Antarctic environment overall. The Adelie specifically breed on exposed rocky land, but hang out on the icy surfaces to live. This means the behavior and movement of Adelie can inform us of both terrains and warn us and other species if any changes to either one of these environments becomes hazardous. Since 1990, the Adelie penguin population appears to have decreased, though researchers are not entirely sure why. They do know, however, that it is important to protect this species. One aspect could be the change in diet. Over time, the color of the guano has varied slightly. A color analysis on the guano can reveal the health of the species overall, particularly how they are responding to climate change and the looming habitat loss. As strange as it sounds, the colorful poop of these flightless birds is helping protect the species, and more Adelie penguins are being discovered with each satellite image that is being examined. Lava Lake is discovered on subantarctic island. The July of 2019 saw the uncovering of a lava lake on the remote Saunders Island, and despite there being approximately 1,500 volcanoes on Earth, Mount Michael on Saunders Island is only the 8th in the world to be confirmed as having a lava lake. The discovery of the volcano was reported in the journal entitled Volcanology and Geothermal Research in early July 2019. This was the first volcano with a lava lake to have been identified in the remote series of South Sandwich Islands. This finding was made using satellite imagery. In 2001, low-resolution satellite data proved to have an anomalous result in it, but the low resolution and limited frame rate could not prove that there was a lava lake on Saunders Island. With more advanced technology capturing shots more frequently and at higher resolutions, images collected between 2003 and 2018 have uncovered the lava lake, spanning 90 to 215 meters in diameter, with the lava hitting the soaring temperatures of 1,279 degrees Celsius. Whilst the stereotypical image of volcanoes spewing out lava is not inaccurate, there is often lava when they erupt. The pools of molten rock these form is usually only temporary. After the eruption, within a matter of days or weeks, this liquid lava pool will dry into solid rock. Mount Michael, along with the volcanoes of Nyiragongo in the Democratic Republic of Congo, Erta Ale in Ethiopia, Mount Erebus beside the Ross Sea, Mount Yasir in Vanuatu, Ambrim in Banatam Kilauea in Hawaii, and the Masaya caldera in Nicaragua are the only volcanoes in the world known to always have lava bubbling away inside. This geological discovery is made all the more exciting by the inaccessible nature of Saunders Island. Very few researchers have visited this volcano, and none have ever reached the summit. Mount Michael is a fascinating, thrilling discovery, and without the high-resolution, high-quality satellite imagery, we perhaps never would have uncovered the world's 8th lava lake. Dr. Alex Burton-Johnson from the British Antarctic Survey commented, "We are delighted to have discovered such a remarkable geological feature in the British Overseas Territory." He elaborated, explaining that the increased understanding of the volcanic activity within Mount Michael had the potential to tell us about similar features elsewhere. Additionally, the discovery of Mount Michael proves we are able to monitor volcanoes from space. The development of space technology is advantageous from many angles and perspectives, including here on Earth. These quiet areas from Antarctic penguin droppings to remote island lava to ancient continents are all home to an abundance of research opportunities. The discoveries that have been made bring us one step closer to the ones that will come next. But what do you make of these 3 interesting discoveries from around the world? The United States Geological Survey just gave an update about the activity around Yellowstone. They said the following: Yellowstone swarm update activity overnight. Some small quakes continue. As of Saturday morning, the University of Utah's seismograph stations event has detected 280 events. These swarms are common as hydrothermal fluids interact with existing phones. No other changes noted. One person asked them whether this activity is rising and if an eruption is going to happen, to which they responded with the following: "No, that is completely wrong. If that were the case, we would see signs of magma movement from the vast array of other monitoring we do at Yellowstone. For example, there would be detectable upward ground movement, but there's none." End quote. This kind of goes against what these photographs show, with some describing this uplift as being proof that there's definitely something going on underneath Yellowstone and that whatever it is increasing in size, with some who've seen the images saying that it reminded them of the bulge that was seen on Mount St. Helens. It's important to note as well that these photographs are from the United States Geological Survey's website. Many of these coms can be found across the park that give live updates, and this is just one of them that appears to show an uplift happening. Naturally, people have been questioning what this is and what's caused it to bulge outwards. When I place the red lines across, you can definitely see there's some kind of ground increase as the 2 images no longer line up. One user said the following: "It's interesting how the USGS have come forward time and time again and said that none of the areas around Yellowstone have increased or decreased in size. Yet various images completely go against this. I'm not saying that this means that an eruption is going to happen, but there's obviously something happening underneath the park." When people have asked the United States Geological Survey for their opinion on these photographs, they haven't responded, although this could just be because they haven't seen them. With all of the recent activity and photographs like this being shared, it's no wonder that people are starting to question what's going on around Yellowstone. The reason people are so invested in activity around the park is because of the supervolcano. One of the explanations for this could be the flow of magma is moving underneath the ground. What's interesting about this is that the United States Geological Survey said that the air should be dropping, not rising. Yet the images appear to show that it's bulging upwards. As mentioned before, this detail is not obvious when you're looking at the live cameras, but when you place 2 photographs side by side, you can see that there's quite a big difference. Those who have been following the quakings, the increase in volcanic flow and the bulge at Yellowstone have all been asking the same question. Why is the United States Geological Survey hiding some of these earthquakes and not reporting on them? One online user said the following: "We can clearly see the seismic trackers inside Yellowstone are picking up on these tremors. Yet in some cases the USGS is not talking about them. They are the ones who tell people not to worry about these quakes and that they will not affect surrounding areas. Yet they outright refuse to comment on some of them. It's a bit confusing, and I can see why people are starting to question what's going on." End quote. It seems though that within the last few days Yellowstone Park officials have started to report on these quakes. On July 16th they said the following: "An ongoing swarm with more than 141 earthquakes is centered beneath Yellowstone Lake. The University of Utah's seismograph stations has located 40 earthquakes larger than magnitude 2 and 2 events in the magnitude 3 range. More locations will be posted throughout the day." Earthquake sequences like these are common and account for roughly 50% of the total of seismic activity in the Yellowstone region. This swarm is similar to the one that occurred around the same place during December 2020. Interestingly, someone asked the following: "When should we be worried about earthquake activity?" And the United States Geological Survey said this: "Perhaps tens of thousands of located events, many of which will be felt along with significant ground deformation and other anomalous changes in geological conditions." End quote. This is confusing people, as they've pointed out that many of these earthquakes have been felt and that there's also been obvious ground deformation that's been photographed using Yellowstone live cameras. So some are questioning whether this means that something is going to happen sometime in the near future. As some have pointed out, all this update has done is caused more questions than answers. Someone even commented that the answer they gave made no sense. As some have said though, the United States Geological Survey isn't mentioning the depth of these earthquakes. The data shows us that these earthquakes are hitting the upper part of the magma chamber at around 2 miles deep. 2 large magma bodies can be found underneath the park, with the top chamber measuring around 5 kilometers or 3.1 miles deep. Many of these recent earthquakes are hitting just beneath the surface between 1 and 4 miles deep. Again, one thing that the United States Geological Survey doesn't report on is that these earthquakes are causing cracks beneath the surface. In fact, one study that was carried out showed that these earthquakes that were hitting north of Yellowstone Lake were causing deep fractures. The data revealed the following: location of earthquakes at the north end of Yellowstone Lake, with the direction of spreading of the deep fracture modeled as vertical volcanic embankment, showing seismic and ground displacement data. So again, these studies show us that these earthquakes are having a direct effect on the areas around Yellowstone, and the deep cracks are starting to form in places such as Yellowstone Lake. Yellowstone Lake has been showing an increase with these coatings, with some of the most recent ones measuring 3 magnitude. West Thumb is the largest geyser basin on the shores of Yellowstone Lake. The heat source of this hydrothermal features in this location is thought to be relatively close to the surface, only 10,000 feet or 3,000 meters down. The West Thumb of Yellowstone Lake was formed by a large volcanic explosion that occurred approximately 150,000 years ago. The resulting collapsed volcano later filled in with water, forming an extension of Yellowstone Lake. It's for this reason that some have expressed their concerns about the increased earthquake activity around this area. After all, it was only in the 1990s that researchers discovered hydrothermal features underneath the surface of the lake. So what do you make of this recent activity at Yellowstone? What do you make of the ground formations seen around the park? And have the United States Geological Survey's answers made you feel better and understand what's going on around Yellowstone? Tom DeLonge is on a mission to prove the existence of mysterious flying crafts. This topic has been featured heavily in the news recently, with people like Elon Musk giving their opinions on the subject. One thing that's come to light is that officials are heavily investigating this topic, having various different videos showing these mysterious objects defying the laws of aviation, with even former presidents coming forward and saying that some of these sightings and encounters can't be explained. Interestingly, a few months back, Tom posted an interesting photograph and caption on his Instagram, but it soon got removed not long after being up. The photograph and message were saved by online users, but some couldn't understand why the post had been taken down, while others said that Tom may have been forced to take the post down. It said the following: in the early 50s, a man was claiming to have regular visits from spacemen that were the same entities that UFO contactees described meeting, as well as the same ones he said were portrayed in the Bible as angels. He said they put outposts in the solar system and had connections to Atlantis and Namaria. He took many photos in the early 50s, no Photoshop or computers, but many were overexposed potentially because of the propulsion field coming from the craft. Man in 2017 wanted to make a 3D animation of the craft and asked to borrow all of the photos and negatives from the 50s to help create the animation. Upon digital enhancement, within a black negative this figure and craft appeared. This may be what the people describe as the tall whites or the Atlanteans or the angels of the Bible. They glow, they can almost look translucent, and it's as if they're surrounded by an electromagnetic force field, but really they may be walking around on Earth, just like men as the Bible texts describe. The post immediately created a discussion online, with some users saying that the photographs don't show anything of interest, and that it's likely nothing, while others came forward and said that they've encountered similar-looking beings. According to local legends and stories, Shasta Mountain is very spiritual and is said to be placed on top of the lost continent of Lemuria. Since the early 1880s, locals close to the region have reported seeing mysterious flying crows close to the mountain, along with strange people who would walk up to the mountain and then vanish. That in Sud is a lost advanced society. Amateur researchers who've looked into the topic of UFOs have said these crafts are particularly interested in volcanoes and that every year photographs are taken of them entering these systems. The story of Lemuria is a long one, but according to those that have looked into its history, the Lemurians are said to be an ancient advanced society who eventually relocated underground, and since then this is where they've stayed. As mentioned earlier, most who have looked into this have said that they currently reside underneath or inside Mount Shasta. The Lemurians are thought to be peaceful, kind, hyper-intelligent, and all-forgiving. All beings that lived in Lemuria work together in harmony. We're all equal and all respected Mother Earth. Many ancient writings throughout the world talk about a great flood that took out many different civilizations. And people who have looked into advanced civilizations have said that either they were taken out as well, or they were forced to live underground and have since stayed there. Others have suggested that the Lamorans actually disguised themselves and started living alongside other humans, saying that most agree that their general appearance is that of a tall human, with blonde hair and blue eyes. Doing a reverse search on the image that Tom posted doesn't bring up anything, causing some to say that this photograph could be the real deal. The overall appearance and characteristics of this alleged species remind some of the tall whites or the Nordics. According to MUFON, the second most commonly reported alien is nearly completely identical to human beings, and this is in almost every other way except for a few key differences. Referred to by MUFON as the Nordic alien species, the Nordic aliens are reportedly aliens that have long blonde hair, so blonde that it's commonly mistaken as being white, pale skin, deep blue eyes, and typically males stand between 6 and 7 feet tall. Many who have claimed to have encountered the Nordic aliens or have been abducted by the species claims that the Nordic aliens possess advanced telepathic abilities, able to communicate entire concepts and emotions with their abductees, and instill them with a tremendous amount of new information. Although many claim that this species is kind in nature, with some saying that the Nordic aliens are preparing to save the human race via abduction in the event of a world-ending catastrophe, there appears to be a number of apocalyptic and doomsday cults that worship the Nordic aliens in sinister ways. However, those that have been taken by these entities have said the feeling of being in their presence was something that they'll never forget. Scientists and researchers, though, don't buy into this idea, saying that these are just stories, and those saying that they've been taken into ships are most likely dreaming, reporting that sleep paralysis can make you think that things are happening around you when they aren't. Scientists have also said that they've never found an advanced civilization living beneath Mount Shasta. Researchers have said that the government could be gearing up to tell us something, noting that things like Space Force could have been created in order to communicate with advanced species outside of our solar system. Former employees who worked for the government have also detailed that they're hiding information from the general public, and that they have decades-old documents that aren't being shared, saying that they show proof of mysterious flying crafts that are much more advanced than what we have. Believers, though, have said that people who don't believe in UFOs are closed-minded, and regardless of what they might think, we have evidence of advanced crafts flying into mountains and volcanoes. Of what you make of this interesting photograph. The group Anonymous recently sent out a message warning people and officials that the release of genetically modified mosquitoes may not be the best idea. Members of the group said that there's definitely advantages with modified mosquitoes. For example, they're said to reduce the spread of infections, and that these new mosquitoes will mate with existing wild mosquitoes. And because their genetic makeup is different, it means that their offspring won't survive, and that wild populations that are considered of pests will decrease dramatically. But the group also noted that these Frankenstein creatures may pose an undetected threat to not only humans, but also Mother Nature, saying that they may develop new unknown pathogens that could be harmful to humans. The project wants to reduce the Egypti species, saying that they are responsible for most of the spreads, and that residents complain about them being pests. On May 1st, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency granted an experimental use permit to Octocon, the company behind the mosquitoes, to release them into the wild. While officials have said that this is fine and that they won't have effects on people, residents close to the release area aren't sure how to feel about this, with Anonymous saying that these genetically modified mosquitoes could damage the ecosystem and may actually create a super durable hybrid mosquito that is resistant to insect repellent. According to Oxitec's website, the company said that when first releasing these mosquitoes in Brazil, they received positive results. The company has also said that the government has signed off plans which will allow them to release these mosquitoes in Texas. Researchers know that it's only female mosquitoes that bite humans because they rely on blood to produce their eggs. So the idea behind the release is that the modified males will produce with the wild females. The males who are genetically modified will carry a protein that will stop the female offspring before they reach maturity. The current model that's been revealed is that over 750 million modified mosquitoes will be released over a 2-year period. Anonymous members, along with local residents around Florida Canes, have voiced their concerns about the release of these mosquitoes, with 237,000 people signing a change petition. The petition reads as follows. Right now, a British company named Oxitec is planning to release genetically modified mosquitoes into the fragile environment of Florida Keys in Texas. The company wants to use the Florida Keys in Texas as a testing ground for these mutant bugs. Even though the local community in Florida Keys has spoken, we even passed an audience demanding for more testing. First, Oxitec is trying to use a loophole by applying to the FDA for an animal bug patent. Now the hot potato has passed the EPA, and Oxitec is at it again. This profit-driven biotech company wants to release more than 15 million genetically modified mosquitoes per week, and this is into both Florida and Texas. These GMO mosquitoes could pose major risks to fragile ecosystems, like the Florida Keys in Texas, and may pose risks to public health and safety. Once again, Oxitec wants to treat people like human experiments. Even though the EPA doesn't have enough information about the environment, health, and even indirect economic impacts of these insects, it might give Oxitec the green light. Over the past several years, we all raised our voices to help stop what could have been the first release of millions of genetically modified mosquitoes in the United States. But now we need to stop this non-consensual experiment again. Tell the EPA to not approve the GMO mosquitoes. We do not consent to being a human experiment, and we do not want GMO mosquitoes. Over 30 local physicians have created a petition to ask for more evaluation of the risk of this GMO mosquito and the possible development of antibiotic-resistant risk as a result of this experiment. These GMO mosquitoes are created with E. coli bacteria and other ingredients. This is very premature technology with very little information. A lot of questions need to be answered. The CDC notes that Oxitec trials are not set up to test for disease reduction. If the experiments go forward, there would still be enough non-GMO mosquitoes in the environment, including in people's homes and backyards, to spread diseases. Even the head of the Cayman Islands, which recently rejected GMO mosquitoes, has said that GMO mosquitoes will not be a solution for fevers that pose a risk to human life. This is a medical intervention without consent. We need real solutions, not GMO mosquitoes. Oxitec applied to the FDA and it took years to decide, and now a huge, overwhelming opposition has spoken. Now Oxitec applied the mosquitoes as a pesticide with very little information on the release to the public, and to scientists for doing a proper evaluation. British biotech Oxitec has not been very transparent. In the data including reduction of percentage of mosquitoes, survival rates, lifespan, and more females per percentage. This is very concerning because in the new experiment, we are talking over 50 million mosquitoes per week, 7 days a week, which will equal to billions of geomosquitoes between Florida and Harris County, Texas. The data of the government have came in where these geomosquitoes has been released is very different from what Oxitec has been claiming. A lot of questions need to be answered, including the solid evidence of the environmental effects in nature, public health, and safety. We need to stop the experiment. If it goes forward, it could mean that these mutant mosquitoes could be released at any point against the wishes of locals and the scientific community. We need to make sure that the EPA does not approve Oxitec's patent. Nearly all experiments with genetically modified crops have eventually resulted in unintended consequences. Superweeds more resistant to herbicides, mutated in resistant insects, and also collateral damage to ecosystems. A recent news story reported that the monarch butterfly population is down by half, and this is in areas where Roundup-ready GMO crops are doused with ultra-high levels of herbicides that wipe out the monarch's favorite plants. What about our native species of Florida keybats? Are there any studies being conducted to see if these mosquitoes will harm the native bat species? Why would we not expect genetically modified insects, especially those that bite humans, to have similar unintended negative consequences? So what do you make of this announcement? And do you think they should be releasing genetically modified mosquitoes into the United States? The Amazon Conservation app just detected something worrying. Its tracker has revealed the first 2 major fires in the Brazilian Amazon for 2021. The images were taken via satellite, revealing that it happened at the end of May and continued into June, with conservationists saying it's likely these fires will increase as the weeks go on. They said the following on their website. Importantly, the imagery also revealed that both fires burned recently in deforested areas. That is, instead of being actual forest fires, both areas were actually first deforested in 2020 and then burned in 2021. The outdisplaced aerosol emissions are detected by the European Space Agency's Sentinel-5 satellite. Elevated aerosol levels indicate the burning of large in a novel approach. The app combines data from the atmosphere, aerosol emissions and smoke, and the ground heat anomaly alerts to effectively detect and visualize major Amazon fires. When fires burn, they emit gases and aerosols. A new satellite Sentinel-5P from the European Space Agency detects these aerosol emissions. Thus, the major feature of the app is detecting elevated aerosol emissions, which in turn indicate the burning of large amounts of biomass. This means that these fires were created on purpose, something that can have negative effects on the environment, and the wildlife as these fires tend to spread quickly. The worry here is that these fires may create a chain reaction and that they will start to spread to other areas of the Amazon jungle. Researchers looking into this have said that over the past 30 years, 15% of the Amazon rainforest has been destroyed, causing wildlife species to massively decline due to habitat loss. Brazilian officials have just revealed that they plan to send in the military to stop this deforestation, saying that at the moment it's at an all-time high. However, Marco Astrini, who is the executive secretary of the Climate Observation, a network of environmental nonprofit groups, said that this military deployment seems to be a smokescreen and that they only claim that they're fighting deforestation when they're not. He said the following: the government has adopted a series of measures that simply destroys the state's monitoring capability, like stopping environmental fines. He also noted that they have the ability to destroy large machinery used for illegal logging and farming, but yet they don't. These illegally lit fires have been a big problem for the rainforest. The drought and deforestation has researchers worried for the future of this jungle, noting that this year could be the worst year for fires seen in the area. Scientists have announced that they're on high alert, as the data has shown them that the region is drier than ever. Matt Feiner is senior research specialist at the nonprofit Amazon Conservation, revealed that the first major fire was a week earlier than last year, and the teams of researchers that observed the Amazon have said they've already detected forest fires throughout the region. Douglas Morton, a NASA Earth scientist who studies fires in the Amazon and the surrounding areas, went on to say the following: widespread drought conditions in 2021 are a worrying sign that extreme fire could affect a large part of South America, straining firefighting resources and threatening ecosystems, infrastructure, and public health. These researchers have revealed, though, that most of the large fires detected in the Amazon are started by humans, and due to the land being cleaned beforehand, these fires that are usually created by miners and loggers are spreading quicker than ever. Marcos Costa, a professor at the Federal University in Brazil, said the following: the edge of a forest is warmer and drier than large tracts of underfragment forests, so fires are more likely to start at the edges and move into the forest. Deforestation of the Amazon is reported to be up over 70%, with the data showing that in the last 12 months over 11 million square kilometers, or 4.2 million square miles, have been cut down around the rainforest, with teams of researchers saying it's hard to visualize how much land that is, but is equal to around 2 million U.S. football fields. These areas of land have been destroyed so they can make way for things like farmland, timber production lines, and also cattle farming. One of the scientists said the following: all that deforestation that everyone was fretting about in 2020, now it's coming back to burn, and I think that the newer deforestation that's spreading now, that's what we're going to see burn in August or September. And the dry season really intensifies. The National Institute for Space Researchers said that their data shows the fires were up a massive 83%, and this is compared to 2018. The fires can easily be seen from outside the region. It's reported that in 2019, over 72,000 fires between January and August were detected, saying this is an all-time high. This is the highest it's been since 2013. But what's angered many is the fact that these fires are started on purpose. And as mentioned, the main reason behind this is because of cattle farming. At the time of some of these fires, officials in the region were criticized as they said that this wasn't a big deal and that forest fires happen all the time and will continue to do so. Their environmental policies have been heavily criticized by millions across the globe. And people have been demanding for years that change needs to happen and that we need to preserve this rainforest. According to Brazil's National Institute for Space Research, although 2019 was the year that everyone spoke out about the Amazon fires, data shows us there was actually last year that the most recorded fires were detected in the region, with scientists now saying it's likely that 2021 will be the worst year for forest fires in the Amazon. Those working at the University of California who are observing the data from the rainforest have revealed that the Amazon is currently in extreme drought. Further reporting that Brazil's National Institute of Meteorology issued an emergency alert warning locals about this. One scientist revealed that many people are not aware of the fact that already this year they've detected over 17 major fires, and that it's likely that things will only get worse. What do you make of these recent fires in the Amazon rainforest?